Hey, Ant here. Today I'm cooking another brisket. I'm still out here in Tennessee visiting family, and I just picked up a brisket from Walmart. So it is a 14-pound choice brisket. Anyway, so I'm trying a new strategy this time. I'm gonna be cooking this brisket very low and slow on the pellet grill. I want the brisket to be able to soak up as much smoke flavor as possible while it's cooking. And at the same time, I want to make sure that I don't wrap until the bark is set. So that is the plan of attack. And let's get into it. Okay, now that the brisket is out of the package and it has been patted dry, next thing I'm gonna do is trim it and then season it. So the seasoning that I'm using, I'm actually following Meathead Golden. I don't remember his name. I think his website's like Amazing Ribs. He has a cookbook, Meathead something. I'm sorry, I'll pop it up on the screen, Meathead. Anyway, in his recipe book, he has different rubs that he uses. So basically, I'm following his recipe for his beef rub, but instead of using regular sugar like it calls, I'm using monk fruit sweetener. So again, that's one of my strategies that I do to keep things lean is whenever a barbecue recipe or rub asks for sweetener, I always use a 0-calorie sweetener. Again, you can use whatever rub you want. You can even just use salt and pepper on this thing. I'm just trying out his beef rub, and we'll see how it turns out. So again, two-step process. I'm gonna trim this and then put the seasoning on. Salt first, and then the beef rub after. So a note to myself, I'm noticing right now that the grain of the meat is actually going this way. So I cut off an uneven piece that was kind of like balled up, and I cut it with the grain. So I'm kind of like saying this on camera so that I remember when I look back. Basically, I don't want to cut this way when I cut the flat slices. I want to cut the opposite way. So I want to cut this way. So cut on the thicker corner, not the smaller corner. I usually do a brisket junior as well, but you know, we're cooking so low on the pellet smoker, and I actually kind of like the crispy burnt parts. And again, because we're cooking so low, I'm not too worried about the flat getting dried out. So I'm actually not doing a brisket junior. I'm also not going to trim the flat at all. It's thinner than the thicker side, definitely, but let's just do it, you know, let's try it out. So my table was running away from me, but I was able to finish trimming and seasoning the meat. So all that's left is to fire up the Traeger and wait until it comes up to temp, and then I'll be able to throw this thing on. Okay, so I threw the brisket on, and I also ended up putting some spare ribs that I bought from Walmart on the grill as well. I figured because the brisket's not going to be done until tomorrow around lunchtime, I figured I might as well use the pellets that I'm using for the brisket, make do of the cook space, and throw some ribs on. So yeah, it was crazy. Just a side note, I noticed that the spare ribs are like so much cheaper than St. Louis cut ribs. So it's like $1 less per pound. So I mean, for me, I don't mind just, you know, cutting out the St. Louis cut rib, and then I love the riblets. I love that like big flap of meat at the end of the spare ribs. So to me, it's like, whoa, you're giving me more meat for less money. So like, I'm all in for that, right? Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up here. I'm going to, there's a lot of cleaning to do because again, I just cut a ton of meat and did a lot of seasoning. And then afterwards, I finally get to take a shower, and then I'll probably get something to eat, and I won't check in for another 3 hours, or maybe 4 hours actually, until it's time to spray the brisket. So see you then. Okay, so it's like 1:30 in the morning. The bark has pretty much set on the brisket. It's looking really good, and I'm just about ready to wrap it. So I just came upstairs to get everything ready in this little kitchen up here. So I went ahead and rolled out some butcher paper, as you can see, and put some tallow on the paper. Basically, I'm just gonna take the brisket, put it right here, and just wrap it up fold it. I currently have the oven set at 230, and I'm basically going to put it on a baking tray, put it in the oven, and then I'm gonna go to bed. And I think in about 7 hours, it should be ready to go. So because I'm cooking it for such a long period of time, basically taking it out of the oven at 9, that would mean that it had been cooking for about 20 hours. So I'll probably not even put it in a cooler like I normally do. I'll probably just put it in a cold oven and just let it rest for maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, and it should be ready to cut. So yeah, that's the plan. I'm ready to go to sleep. Oh my gosh, I got to talk about those ribs. Okay, so I ate ribs, or I made ribs earlier. I kind of showed them on camera before. Man, those ribs are freaking good, man. The ribs were amazing. The rib tips are really good. So I use the Meathead Goldwyn, I think. AmazingRibs.com guy. I used his pork rub, replaced the sugar with Swerve brown sugar, so I had 0 calories. But man, that rub was really good. I think I'm gonna start using that for my pork butts and for ribs from now on. At least for the time being. I might try something else in the future, but I'm on a fix for that rub for at least the next like 3 to 6 months. But yeah, they were really good, super juicy. I'm not a huge fan of the signature Traeger pellet wood flavor that it gives the meat, and that kind of worries me for this brisket, but we'll see. I think that the beef flavor, and because the bark has set so well with the spices that I put on it, I think that hopefully the smoke flavor, at least the flavor of the wood that I don't like, I think it might be the maple wood. I don't like that flavor. It won't show as prominent, but we'll see. Anyway, all that to say is the ribs were great. Loved them. Outside of the little, just my personal preference. I'm not a big fan of that wood flavor on the ribs. Hopefully I'll like it on the brisket, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up, and then I will catch you guys in the morning.
The next day.
Hey, good morning. So, just woke up. It's about 8:30 in the morning. That's when I pulled the brisket. So the brisket was actually in the oven last night at 230 degrees for about 6 hours. When I checked the brisket, it was already temping at like 211. So, what I know is that my in-laws' oven is a lot better than mine at home. So, note to self, gotta make sure that I check the brisket more often, especially if I'm using a different oven, because clearly my in-laws' oven is a lot more effective than mine was, and it finished a lot faster. I think it probably was done an hour before I pulled it. So I think this is gonna be a very fork tender brisket, but I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like exactly. So hold on. So yeah, as you can see, the paper has been totally soaked through with the fat. It's all over the pan, and you can also see the fat has kind of hardened and cooked. Anyway, I'm just gonna let this rest for a very short period of time, because again, I cooked it for, gosh, what is that? 8:30. I started to cook at 1:30, so that would be 19 hours. So it's been cooking for 19 hours. So I'm going to just take this off the pan so it can cool down faster, and then just go from there. I will see you guys when it's time to cut. Man, oh man, would you look at this brisket? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut this thing up, but just like I said in my other videos, from now on I am separating the point from the flat muscle every time I cook a brisket, so I can make brisket burnt ends. That is my favorite thing about a brisket, is the burnt ends, so I will definitely be doing that. So I'm gonna go ahead and separate the point flat, cut up the burnt ends, and then cut the flat pieces, and then we can try this thing and we'll call it a day. All right, brisket is all cut up, so I'm gonna go ahead and try both the flat and the point, and I'll let you guys know what I think. So before I even eat, first thing I'm gonna say is that I can tell how tender this meat is. It's a little bit too done in terms of presentation, but for my taste, I'd much rather have a tender brisket than a tough one. So I'm really excited to eat this. I think this is gonna be really good. So let's go ahead and start with the flat. So yeah, again, I just lifted it up and just a piece came off. So let's go ahead. So as you can see, there's still quite a bit of juice in this flat. So, wow. Bark is so good. Amazing ribs, guy. Okay, you sold me on the pork rub. You sold me on the beef rub. I will never make a brisket with another rub. No, scratch that. I have a lot of Montreal seasoning at home, so I got to use that. But man, that is so much better. And like again, I told you before, I don't even like the smoke flavor from those pellets that the Traeger has, the signature pellets, and this is phenomenal. Oh my gosh, I'm like shook right now. So I'm gonna try it with the point muscle. So here, I'm gonna give you guys the first bite. Look at that glistening fat. Look at that. You guys can have that one. That's for y'all. All right, my turn. I wish you were here. I wish you could taste this. Oh my gosh. Flavorful, not over salty. Wow. On a pellet grill, man. Like, that's crazy. That is so good. But anyway, I'm gonna put some sauce on these burnt ends, throw it in the oven, share this with my family. Really excited to share this with them because last brisket I made on the pellet grill last week was an absolute failure. This is gonna blow them away. But anyway, I will catch you guys on the next one.